Picture this. You have a credit card with a $5,000 limit. You spent $2,000 on furniture, not because you're reckless, not because you're broke, but because you're strategic. You have the cash sitting safely in your bank account. You plan to pay the card off in full. You wait for the statement to arrive. It hits your inbox. You open it immediately. You pay the full balance, zero interest, zero late fees. You did everything right. You are a responsible borrower. And yet 3 days later, your phone lights up with a notification. Your credit score has dropped 25 points. Just like that. No missed payments, no new debt, no hard inquiries. Just a sudden drop. It feels unfair. It feels random. It feels like the system punished you for being responsible. But here's the truth. This happens to thousands of people every single month. And almost every time, it comes down to one misunderstood date on the calendar. One date that most people don't even realize matters more than the due date. Welcome to Smart Money History. I'm Arthur, and today we're going to expose how the banking system actually takes its snapshot of your finances, why your credit score is often living 30 days in the past, and how shifting your payment by just 48 hours can quietly transform your financial reputation from average to exceptional. Before we dive into the mechanics, let's dismantle the first illusion. From the time we're young adults, we're trained to believe that the due date is the most important financial day of the month. Pay by the due date, and you're safe. Miss IT, and you're punished. And, in terms of interest and fees, that's true. The due date protects your wallet, but it does not protect your score. The credit bureaus are not watching a live feed of your bank account. They are not updating your score in real time every time you make a payment. Your credit score is not a movie, it's a photograph. And that photograph is usually taken on the one day of the month when your balance is at its highest. Imagine your billing cycle runs from the 1st to the 30th. Throughout those 30 days, you swipe your card for groceries, gas, dinner, subscriptions, maybe a larger purchase like that furniture. Your balance climbs gradually. Then, on the 30th, something critical happens. Critical. The billing cycle closes. The bank generates your statement, that PDF that lands in your inbox. That exact balance, frozen at that exact moment, is what gets reported to the credit bureaus. Not what you owe 3 days later, not what you owe on the due date, not what you owe after you make your responsible payment. That snapshot, that number, that is what gets hard-coded into your credit report for the month. Here's where the psychological disconnect happens. Your due date is typically 20 to 25 days after the statement closing date, so you might have $3,000 reported on the 30th, even if you pay it down to zero on the 20th of the following month. In your mind, you're debt-free. In the bank system, you're responsible. But in the credit bureau's snapshot, you look heavily leveraged. You feel like you cleaned your room. But the photo was taken before you picked anything up. The system isn't rigged. It's bureaucratic. It's slow. Your credit score is essentially living on a 30-day delay. And unless you understand when the camera clicks, you're letting the bank define your financial reputation based on your messiest day of the month. Now let's talk about why this matters so much. When people think about credit scores, they usually think about payment history. And yes, payment history is the largest slice of your FICO score at 35%. Missed payments are devastating. But the second largest category, at a massive 30%, is amounts owed. And within that category, the dominant factor is credit utilization. Utilization is simply the percentage of your available credit that you are currently using. If you owe $500 on a $1,000 limit, you're at 50% utilization. If you owe $500 on a $10,000 limit, you're at 5%. Same balance, completely different impact. The algorithm interprets these percentages as risk signals. Generally speaking, under 10% looks excellent, under 30% looks safe. Above 50% begins to look risky, and near 100% signals distress. Even if you pay in full every month, if the snapshot captures you at high utilization, your score can drop significantly. And this applies not only to your overall utilization across all cards, but also to each individual card. You could have $50,000 in total available credit. But if one single $500 card is maxed out, the algorithm flags that account as a potential warning sign. Statistically, people who max out cards are more likely to default. The scoring model doesn't know your intentions, it only sees patterns. But here's the empowering part. In most common scoring models, including FICO 8, utilization has no memory. None. Unlike a late payment, which can haunt your report for 7 years, utilization resets as soon as a new balance is reported. If you were at 90% utilization in January and your score dropped, but in February you report 5%, your score can rebound almost immediately. It's as if the previous month never happened. This makes utilization one of the most powerful short-term levers you can pull in your financial life. You can repair utilization damage in 30 days or less. That's incredibly rare in the credit world. So, what's the solution? It's not about paying earlier in the sense of beating the due date. It's about paying before the statement closes. Instead of waiting for the bill to arrive and then paying it, you pay down your balance a few days before the statement closing date. Let's say your statement closes on the 30th. On the 27th or 28th, you log into your account and check your balance. If it's $800 and your credit limit is $1,000, that's 80% utilization. Too high. So you manually send a payment for $790. Now your balance is $10. When the statement generates on the 30th, it reports $10. That $10 is what gets sent to the bureaus. Then, on the due date weeks later, you simply pay off the remaining $10. You pay zero interest. You carry no long-term debt, but the public record shows you using only 1% of your available credit. You have threaded the needle between the reporting date and the due date. At this point, you might think the obvious goal is to report zero on every card every month. Zero must be perfect, right? Surprisingly, no. Consistently reporting zero across all cards can slightly suppress your score. The scoring model is designed to evaluate how you manage debt. If you report zero month after month, the algorithm sees inactivity. It sees no data. And paradoxically, a person who never uses credit can appear slightly riskier than someone who uses it lightly and responsibly. The sweet spot appears to be small, consistent utilization. High scorers often average between 4 and 7%. This leads to a strategy known as all zero except one. If you have multiple credit cards, you allow one card to report a tiny balance, maybe 1 to 5% of its limit, while all others report zero. This shows active usage without risk. It feeds the algorithm positive data without triggering concern. Now, it's critical to distinguish between reporting a balance and carrying a balance. Reporting a balance simply means allowing a small amount to appear on the statement before paying it by the due date. Carrying a balance means failing to pay the statement balance in full and being charged interest. These are not the same. You can report a small balance and still pay zero interest if you pay the statement balance in full by the due date. The magic happens in that window between statement close and due date. There is, however, a line you should not cross. It's called credit cycling. Suppose you have a $1,000 limit. You spend $1,000, pay it off mid-cycle, then spend another $1,000, pay it off, and repeat. From your perspective, you're being responsible. But from the bank's risk department, you've effectively pushed $3,000 of volume through a $1,000 exposure limit. This can trigger fraud monitoring systems. It can look like manufactured spending or bust-out fraud. Banks extend limits based on their desired risk exposure. Cycling aggressively can result in account freezes or closures. If you regularly approach your limit, the better solution is to request a credit limit increase. Higher limits naturally reduce utilization ratios and make management easier. Another common mistake is closing old credit cards to simplify finances. If you close a card with a $10,000 limit, you instantly reduce your total available credit. If you had $10,000 used across $50,000 in total credit, you were at 20% utilization. Close that $10,000 card, and suddenly your available credit drops to $40,000. Now, you're at 25% utilization without spending a dollar more. The math shifts instantly. Old cards, especially those with high limits and no annual fees, are valuable buffers. Even if you don't use them frequently, keeping them open can support your utilization ratios. A small recurring subscription charged monthly and set to auto-pay can keep the account active without risk. Looking ahead, newer scoring models like FICO 10T introduce trended data. These models don't just look at a single snapshot. They analyze patterns over 24 months. They can see if you consistently spike to high utilization and pay down at the last moment. However, adoption of these models remains slow. Most mortgage lenders and auto lenders still rely on older models where the snapshot strategy remains powerful. At its core, the banking system runs on rules. Most people only learn the rules about interest and fees. They learn how to avoid penalties, but the rules about data reporting are equally powerful. They shape how the algorithm sees you, and the algorithm decides your borrowing costs, your approval odds, your negotiating leverage. When you understand the timing mechanics, you stop feeling victimized by random score drops. You realize the system didn't punish you, it simply recorded you at the wrong moment. And once you know when the camera clicks, you can decide what the room looks like when the photo is taken. So here's your action step. Pick one credit card, find the statement closing date, mark it in your calendar. 2 or 3 days before that date, check your balance. Pay it down to under 10% of the limit. Let the statement generate with a small reported balance. Then, pay that balance in full by the due date. Do this for 1 month. Watch your score. Notice the change. You are not manipulating the system. You are aligning with its mechanics. There is a difference. Responsible borrowing is not just about paying on time. It's about understanding how data flows through financial institutions. And when you control the snapshot, you control the narrative. That is how a small shift in timing, sometimes just 48 hours, can be the difference between a good score and an exceptional one. Thank you for tuning in to Smart Money History. I'm Arthur, and now that you understand the snapshot, you'll never look at a due date the same way again.